Next up on the business track panel, how to start practical first steps to begin your PQC migration. Speakers include Jeff Stapleton, PQC researcher and architect at Wells Fargo, Tom Patterson, managing director, emerging technology security at Accenture, and Jeremy Rowley, SVP of strategy at DigiCert.
All right, welcome, and I'm glad to have Jeff and Tom both here today with me to talk about PQC pilots and how to get started on those. It's been a hot topic in the industry, but I'm hoping that their knowledge and their experience with PQC pilots in the past will give us some practical steps on how to conduct these pilots and how to measure their success. So in way of introduction, let's start with Tom. Can you just tell us in a couple sentences some of the PQC pilots you worked on, and then we'll go over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, so pilots are a really important way to focus when you're looking at a PQC migration. It's not the first step, but it's a really important step. And it really does, when we do it with our clients, it does two things. It validates an approach or helps you learn about what approach would work best in your environment. But it also helps to make this real for the rest of your organization. Let your board understand the results. Let your leadership understand the results. Let your partners understand the results. And it needs to have really tangible results when it comes out at the end. It shouldn't be too long. It shouldn't be too short, but it really should be very accessible. Even if you don't understand encryption at the very lowest levels, people looking at the results of your pilot should be able to make sense of that. We're really happy that our clients around the world are getting to the point now where they've done the important setup work and they're now able to organize a pilot that makes sense. And they, some of them are putting out press releases to show their clients, hey, we're on top of this. And so the pilot, you really want it not to be overly technical. You want the results to be very accessible.
And Jeff, what pilots have you been involved in?
Actually, we've taken a two-prong attack. We're doing industry-level pilots with multiple other companies, and we're doing pilots internally to test out various technologies and make sure that things will work. When we do pilots, we typically do it in a phased type. We do a proof of technology, bring the parts together, make sure the things interconnect, make sure things are going to work. Then we move to a proof of concept, and typically then we can do a small production pilot. We call it friends and family kind of thing, and we make sure that works. And then when we're ready for the larger pilots, we do that with much larger groups, upwards of hundreds of people. And then when we get that far, we figure we're pretty ready for production. So that's the approach we've been taking.
And I know, Jeff, at Wells, you use the word pilot maybe differently than everyone does. A pilot at Accenture with our clients builds upon that early step. So we do the same first step where we try and make sure that things are interoperating properly and that the performance is understood and working. But we do that in a quantum security test lab that works on it at that level, because there's a lot of technical, as you well know, a lot of technical changes that have to happen to get it to that point. When we use the word pilot with our clients, it's really about bringing in their users, making it work in an environment that they can understand and believe in. So for us, it's a two-step process with two different words, and it sounds like for Wells, you use the same word of pilot to cover the whole gamut.
Yeah, that's why we talk about proof of technologies versus proof of concepts. Proof of concepts is the stage where you're getting ready to actually do something in the production environment. We have lots of proof of technologies, and sometimes they don't get any further than the lab.
Yeah, that's interesting. So why are you guys pushing pilots right now with your customers and within Wells and at Accenture? If RSA is still secure and hasn't been broken by PQC quite yet, what is the rationale for wanting to do these pilots or these proof of concepts on the technology side with customers?
Well, I can respond to that first if you want, Tom.
Sure.
Whenever we change a architecture from one cryptographic algorithm to another, not just changing keys, but changing the actual algorithm, this is a big deal. We call these cryptographic transitions. I was part of a co-author of an IEEE paper back in 2006 when we talked about this and introduced the concept. So we had to go in the financial services, we had to go from proprietary algorithms to DES, DES to triple DES to AES. we had to go from RSA 1024 to 2048, SHA-1 to SHA-2, and on and on. So for us, this is just yet another series of cryptographic transitions. However, this is going to be the big one. This is going to infect the entire financial services industry. And based on that history of all those other changes, some of which we're still not done with yet, we know this is going to take a really long time. These changes, these transitions could take years, could take decades, because there's so many pieces, parts, there's so many people involved. You really, if you haven't started already, you're already behind.
Yeah, I liken it to a pretty good news story. And so, security professionals understand if there is a serious risk and there's a remediation, we can't just bury our heads in the sand and say we don't want to work on it. You have to address that. You have to tackle that risk. So it's not like, we looked up and we saw that there's a meteor coming that's going to destroy the Earth tomorrow, and there's nothing you can do about it. Then you go hug your family and say your goodbyes. In this case, up until last year, a lot of companies said, well, there's nothing we can do about it. There's no new standard yet. When there's a standard, we'll take care of it. So what we've seen at Accenture is a real change in attitude towards getting started now, ever since last August of 2024, that the new standards did come out, and at least the initial ones.
Well, one difference, though, I think between the PQC side and the SHA-1 to SHA-2 or 1024 to 2048 is those industries had well-established standards by the time we moved, right? SHA-2 is a well-known algorithm before. It feels very much like one of the difficulties in setting up a pilot is understanding where you can go for correct information, correct technical information, and how you keep up to date on the emerging standards. Where, NIST is still has changed things. IETF is still going through its adoption process. What is your recommended way in keeping up with the changes in technology and the changes in standards so that your pilot is matching where the industry and the technology is going? Jeff, you're involved a lot in industry standards. Why don't you answer that one?
Yeah, I'm pro standards. You need to get involved early. You need to be active. You need to be in the room. You need to be hearing the conversations. Hopefully you're in the conversations and doing the reviews. You're actually writing some of the standards. Case in point, when we just talked about the proof of technologies, we began our PQC performance testing back when they had just come out with the round 3 candidates. We knew the algorithms we were testing weren't going to be the final ones, but we also knew that the results we got would be a little better. And so, yeah, we were already measuring how bad it was going to be. Pleasantly, it wasn't as bad as we feared. So, yes, standards are going to drive it, but you need to get involved now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's no real substitute for staying current. There's different paths to stay current. Jeff and I are voracious readers in terms of technical papers and what comes out. I tend to trust technical papers, juried technical papers, more so than media versions of them and headlines that might miss the point or some of the key points. But the information is not kept secret. There's no cross-border problems. There's no export control problems. This is a global change that's underway, and there's a lot of great information available. Definitely recommend either focusing on giving it time to focus on the changes yourself or partnering with people that are focused on that. When we do a strategy engagement to kick it off, there's a tail that goes with that, so they get these current updates. Our clients get these current updates about what I saw when I went to the NIST conference and what we were focused on and what we see coming. But there's no lack of information. It's just spending the time to go out and work with it and come to your own understandings.
Yeah, Tom, that's an excellent point. It has to be a team. And what you need to realize is the team does not necessarily have to be restricted to your organization.
So let's come back to the actual pilots that you guys have experienced. Tom, you've probably done a lot with Accenture on helping different customers and clients set up these pilots. What is the hallmark of a successful pilot? What makes a pilot successful versus unsuccessful?
Yeah, so one of them really jumps out to respond to this question specifically, and that is a pilot we put in well before the standards came out from NIST. Like Jeff, we kind of saw what the candidates were. We saw which direction the standards were going to lean towards. But we knew that they would be different. We knew that they wouldn't be the actual FIPS pubs that would be out at some point in the future. But our client really wanted to get ahead of the game. Really wanted to. They'd done their homework. They built their strategies. They'd gone through the labs. They'd figured out how things should work, and they were ready to go do it because for those two reasons, they wanted not only to learn how it would actually operate in part of their environment, but they also wanted to be able to show people that they're making progress here and that they're going to be able to fix this problem. Again, this is not the meteor's going to eat the world type of an issue. This is a big, serious problem, and there's a very realistic, doesn't take quantum physics to defend against it. It's just a new kind of math and just different encryption. It's a big job, but there's no magic required. So they wanted to show that to their clients, to their customers, to their board, to their partners, their investors. They wanted to show that they were on top of it. So they did it with us, and we put in a crypto agile system layer inside that allowed them to use the most current candidate algorithms from NIST at the time. And they showed it. They put out they did a press release. They went out and they talked about it. They showed their board. Everything was great. And then later, months later, quarters later, the standards came out. And they said, okay, well, now what do we do? Do we have to do another pilot? And no, press the button, press the crypto agile button and tell it what you want to upgrade to. And it almost immediately was able to upgrade from the old candidate algorithms to the new standard algorithms. And this is something that really showed their leadership, that they were on top of the ball, and now they're expanding that pilot to do more and more parts of their enterprise. So this is something that again, it has two goals in my mind. One is to learn, and it's the people implementing, how does this work? What will work? What do we have to change? Who has to be involved? How do you do the training? What is invisible changes versus what is a change in process? But also really being able to talk to leadership that aren't security technologists, aren't encryption experts, go in and say, hey, there's a new standard, there's a new risk, there's a new standard, and here's how we're covering it. And see, watch this, boom, boom, boom. That's a really successful pilot. And that goes a long way to securing future funding for the rest of the project, the rest of the enterprise, and get this up and rolling across the entire enterprise before you get to that Q day when an adversary can take you down with a quantum attack.
Yeah, so one of the things you mentioned is the crypto agility side. One of the challenges I know I faced in launching pilots myself is that a lot of the technology, a lot of the devices out there, the existing technology doesn't really support post-quantum crypto, or is moving towards supporting post-quantum crypto, but there are definitely some laggards in that direction. Jeff, what do you do about those devices? Is there any technology advice you can give in launching a successful pilot and how you scope your systems, or what devices you include in that pilot, given that there is a mishmash of different support for PQC?
Yeah, and just to be clear, mishmash is a technical term.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing I want to mention to you that a successful pilot could be a failure. Because you choose a product, you choose a vendor, you work with them, you bring it in. You might find out that it's not a good fit. You might find out that that's not the direction to go. So the pilot is, quote, failed. However, it's still a success because it gave you a lot more information than what you needed before. And the way you're posting this as it's very complex. It's even worse than what you think, because a lot of vendors don't want to go from legacy to the new, what they call pure PQC. They want to do a hybrid. They want a mixture of the old and the new. Now, personally, I'm not in favor of that, but a lot of vendors want to go that direction. And if that's what's going to be available in the products, and those are the products you have to use, you have to be adaptable. Hence, crypto agility comes into a huge play.
And you raise a great point, Jeff, in terms of what all the other vendors are doing. Every product, everybody in any client's ecosystem, whether it's a SaaS service or a hardware product or a software product or an enterprise product or anything, all these companies are also changing over the coming few years. They're also changing their security, and they want to keep selling to you. So they want to do what you need done. They don't want to be aced out because you've changed your requirements to demand PQC. So getting those conversations going early. We've made it a whole unique step within sort of our 8-step methodology that we look at here at Accenture to do that ecosystem conversations early and often. Really start to have cryptographers talk to cryptographers at all these vendors so that you understand what they're doing and you understand when they're doing it. And that way you can make the most informed decision about how your overall system will roll out. Because it's not just about you changing your encryption within your castle, but all of your interconnected ecosystem, they're all going to be changing too. So having that coordination and, dare I say, orchestration among all that is a huge decision criteria for success. And so that's something we try and get our clients to start looking at early, to start having those conversations. We've created a vendor database that has about 50 or 60 companies and what they're doing, cryptographer to cryptographer. So not just trusting what the website says or some headline type material. Yes, we're quantum safe. We're military grade, but actually having, this is what we're doing and this is when we're doing it, and get a real understanding of that. But there are literally hundreds and thousands of companies that are important to clients around the world. So having those conversations early and often throughout the process is a big game changer.
Yeah, I've definitely found that true. I've never reached out to a vendor and said, hey, I'm going to launch a pilot. Do you want to participate, and have them turn me down? They're always really excited because they're also confused maybe on what they need to do, and having a partner that will work with you on it is exciting for them. Like I think you said earlier, Jeff, it's easier when you're going at it together, not in a silo and doing it. We're almost out of time, so I wanted to give some final thoughts from you guys on how we can get started. So what is one piece of advice that you would give organizations when they're going to launch a pilot? What one piece of advice would make them successful?
Well, the number one message, I sometimes feel I should tattoo it on my forehead, is start early. You're going to go through this process. The closer you get to an adversary being able to take you down, the harder this is going to be, the more expensive this is going to be, the more opportunity to make mistakes this is going to be. Starting early is really important. Not to be afraid. Again, this is math. This is encryption. You know about this. You have people that know about how encryption works in your organization. You have vendors that sell you PKI systems and certificate lifecycle management systems, and you understand this. You don't have to go out and say, well, I don't have any quantum physicists on the payroll, so I can't possibly do quantum security. This is something not to be afraid of. It is something to plan early, and then build in your plan, build post-quantum security into your other projects. This is what's proven to be for our clients a huge money saver over the whole life cycle of this. Don't look at this as I need to fund a whole separate quantum project. But if you're going to do a multi-cloud transition, or if you're going to do a zero trust upgrade, or you're going to do a tech debt refresh, any of these other big budgeted programs you have in your 5-year plans, just by building quantum security into that, by making some early changes into your RFPs and your buying, purchasing departments to say, hey, it's on our suppliers to match their PQC with our PQC requirements and our model now. Just doing those simple things saves so much money. At our level, our Accenture clients are really large. They're literally saving millions and millions of dollars by this early start and early planning. There's no downside, and there's a lot of upside.
Sounds good. Jeff, same question to you, except can you also add what you think will differentiate these adopters, successful adopters versus people who lag behind?
Yeah, 2 points there. One, in addition to what Tom said, brilliantly stated, by the way, you need to look at what you're going to change and the priority you're going to change it using a risk-based assessment. Okay, we learned that early. It has really helped us. People talk about the low-hanging fruit. Well, maybe that's the easy stuff, but if that's the low-risk stuff, you can wait on that one. You've got to look at the risk and decide what your project plan is going to look like. Now, with what happens if somebody isn't ready and we are? Well, frankly, because, and what Tom said earlier, this is a global, for financial services, this is global. We're taking the position nobody can be left behind. Everybody's going to have to upgrade. And frankly, if you're not ready and the Q day occurs, you're just not going to be a vendor to us. I'm sorry. That's the way it's going to have to be. And we don't want that to happen. We don't want the risk to the financial services industry. Excuse me. So nobody needs to be left behind.
Well,
You don't want to find that out at the last second. You want to talk to them early on so that they know that this is the process. And if they've got a budget for a change, then they've got a budget for a change if they want to keep your business, Jeff.
Well, thank you both. This has been extremely helpful, and I appreciate all the advice you've given us. Look forward to chatting with you more a little later.
All right. Thanks very much for having us.
All right. Take care.